Welcome to the Korea Pro Podcast, your weekly guide to understanding the most pressing and complicated developments shaping South Korea. We're your hosts, Jungmin Kim,
John Lei,
and Junha Park of Korea Pro.
Go beyond headlines as we explain not just what happened, but also what really matters and why it matters.
If you monitor South Korea for work or just trying to keep up, you're in the right place.
This is the Korea Pro Podcast.
Hello, listeners, and welcome back to another episode of the Korea Pro Podcast. It is now Thursday, March 26th. It's a bit before 3 p.m. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm getting mighty sick and tired of this oil shock that we're still going through and will likely go through for God knows how long.
And let's go through it now again. So what's the latest this week?
Oh, yippee-ki-yay. What else has been going on? Well, besides the fact that the South Korean Foreign Minister Cho Yeon has been talking to the Omanis and the Kuwaitis for oil and gas exports, they've also been talking to, at least reportedly, they've been talking amongst themselves, along with the South Korean energy corporations, about importing oil from Russia. And also the Consumer Sentiment Index is at a 10-month low. So that's great news for everyone. People are now feeling spooked. Now, regarding the Consumer Sentiment Index, it has been reported that although the Korean people do expect inflation to jump up and they expect their incomes to be negatively impacted, they still do not, at least for the time being, intend to change their spending plans. Of course, we have to keep in mind that people make long-term plans on whether to go on holidays or whatever, and they cannot just cancel things right away. So at least for the time being, their spending plans are not changing, but you can bet your ass that they will change quite fast.
And what has been the South Korean government response this week?
It was basically trying their best to tell the people that no one's panicking yet.
But are people panicking? Are the companies, consumers, how's the sentiment right now?
It really depends on the day, and it really depends on what Donald Trump says on that day. The thing is that both Donald Trump and whoever's running things in Iran, they're saying different things without providing much evidence. For example, maybe it was 2 or 3 days ago now, Donald Trump said that he got a significant quote-unquote prize from the Iranians, and this was about a lot of money.
Oh, prize from Iranians?
And I don't know how true this is, but I think I just saw a headline just now that said that the supposed prize was about letting oil tankers through the Strait of Hormuz. But anyway, because there's not a whole lot of strong evidence to see whether this conflict will result in a ceasefire or continued escalation, and we are seeing all of these different kinds of signals coming forward, the markets are really just responding to vibes. On one day, the Kospi is doing well, the won's kind of stabilizing just a wee bit, and the next day, when there is no progress and another Middle Eastern country is saying that they cannot honor their contracts to sell gas or oil or whatever it is, then it takes another dip. And so this is what we're living with right now. There's just nothing but uncertainty and vibes.
Junha, what about, public sentiment or the cabinet meeting discussions or official comments or whatnot?
Well, as John said, in cabinet meetings and officials meetings, the president and cabinet ministers, they're just trying to stabilize the public concern regarding oil prices. There's also concern that was just recently allayed by the government referring to the naphtha prices and the naphtha shortage, some sort of shortage of plastic bags within convenience stores. That was allayed by the Environment Ministry, saying that there's no issue at the moment and there's no issue that will arise in the future. Of course, the president's trying to make sure that the supplementary budget, which is set to be filed on the 31st, so next week, is something that comes into fruition soon.
Let's talk about the supplementary budget a little bit. What has been the discussion so far? What is the rationale? Where is this budget probably going to go into, and what are they trying to cater to?
Right. So with the confirmation of the appointment of the new budget minister, Park Kung-geun, they had the meeting with cabinet.
Did it pass, by the way?
Yes, he did pass. They had a meeting with the cabinet attended by Park Kung-geun and the Democratic Party, the ruling party, and they said that the supplementary budget bill will be filed on the 31st, and they'll aim to minimize that level of industrial damage through a swift processing of the supplementary budget and also alleviating that burden of high oil prices that we were just discussing.
Let's stay with the domestic politics just a little bit more. There has been a lot of like nomination related issues in both parties, some power struggle between People Power Party candidates as well, or a little more like potential candidates.
Are you talking about Daegu?
Yes. And also, like, not just Daegu, but also overall, there is ongoing, beef between Oh Se-hun, Lee Jung-hyun, whatnot. With the DP, is everything like smooth sailing with the nomination?
Not at the moment. I think that barring nominations, I think there's quite a resurgence of the pro-moon, pro-Lee faction that's going on. So
What do you mean by that?
there's a bit of a rift at the moment, especially regarding the pro-Lee faction and hearkening back to the 2022 presidential election when the former DP leader, Song Young-gil, he came out on a radio program a couple of days ago, and he suggested that the pro-moon faction within the party at the time did not want to vote for Lee Jae-myung and instead voted for Yoon instead, and were not as proactive in the campaigning for Lee in the 2022 presidential election. So that has caused a bit of a rift within the DP, saying that it's sort of a finger-pointing game and a blame game of, why that 2022 failure happened. And it's sort of a full overarching debate of the sort of division within the party of the pro-Lee, the pro-Jong Chung-lee, and the pro-Moon Jae-in faction that's still coming into play, with also the talks of the merger with the Choguk party as well.
What's going on with Choguk's party, by the way?
Choguk's party is staying afloat. It's trying to do its best to get into the echelons of the June election prospects.
The whole drama
about the merger.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they've decided after the June elections, they'll try and push for that merger again with the DP.
Moving back to international relations and security for a second, Takaichi, we did briefly mention it in the previous episode that she is going for a summit with Trump at the worst timing ever. And then her decisions will set a precedent for South Korea as well. What was the decision? What was the discussion aside from how Trump mentioned Pearl Harbor?
That was basically it. She made a huge, weird stink of a face, like, what the hell am I doing here? Where am I?
She doesn't have a good poker face, does she?
Not then. Not her expression was very expressive, let's put it that way. But what we were talking about last week was what might happen if Takaichi met with Trump and Trump said, hey, Japan, send your helicopter carriers or whatever. And Takaichi said, yes, boss, and would do it. And if she did, what would that imply for South Korea?
Yeah.
And the answer to that, as it turns out, was bupkis. Japan said that
we have a whole different problem now, right?
Yeah. Japan said that they would consider it, they would talk things through. But basically what Takaichi did was that she went to the White House and kicked the can down the road and did not make any strong commitments, which gave a lot of breathing room for South Korea because South Korea would not have to make that same decision.
Yeah, because they can both go, let me see what I can do, and they just leave it at that for a while. But then what also happened was that there was a broader investment promise from Japan for the U.S. Does that have any implications for Seoul?
Short term, long term, God knows at this point. Everything's going on all at once. Whether we're talking about Section 301 investigations, whether we're talking about Section 232 sanctions, or whether we're talking about the Section 122 tariffs, whether we're talking about the Strait of Hormuz, whether we're talking about missiles being lobbed everywhere, everything is all happening at once.
Right.
But when Tokyo said that they were going to invest more money in the U.S., more than they had initially pledged, yeah, Donald Trump was really happy about that. But for now, at least, neither Trump nor Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick or Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has come to South Korea and said, hey, match what Japan's doing. They haven't done that yet. But, as distracted as they might be what's going on with Iran, they're not dummies, at least not when it comes to sucking other countries' money and assets as much as possible. And so this call might come, but it's just not happening, at least not today.
And so related to the whole oil shock issue, there were interesting reports citing the government. Was this a week ago?
This was about a week ago. I wrote an executive briefing about that.
Well, what was the report?
It was about how the South Korean government and how the South Korean oil companies were talking amongst themselves about importing oil from Russia.
What are the risks?
Well, there are quite a few. Let's get the obvious ones out of the way first. South Korea has aligned with Western countries since 2022 after Russia's invasion of Ukraine and stopped buying Russian oil. So, but is that a big risk? No, it is not. And that's because the US made the move first. The US, now this isn't a complete sanctions relief, but the US made a temporary, caveated, nuanced sanctions relief for Russian oil. And so, at least for the time being, and I believe this is until April 1st or something, I got to go back and check the actual dates. But until then, there would be an ability for countries to import Russian oil. So it is within that legal time frame, so that it wouldn't be busting any sanctions. Of course, although it was for April 1st, or again, whatever date it was, this sort of sanctions relief can be expanded or extended. So the risk is not violating sanctions so much. There are other risks. The first big risk is how will Europe respond to this? Now, when the Europeans have moved away from nuclear energy, they relied on gas, LNG, and they relied a lot from Norway, for example, as well as the Gulf states. And they stopped buying Russian oil and gas because after years of this war happening, they finally got enough, shall we say, buffer to stop importing Russian energy. But if South Korea, this country that's supposed to be aligned with the Western powers, starts to import oil from Russia, the Europeans might get a little antsy about it. Of course, this will still fall under the sanctions relief program, but the Europeans won't be all too happy. But that's the foreign policy aspect. There's also a practical aspect of it. Not all oil is the same. Oil from the Middle East and oil from Russia have different chemical properties. And the refineries that exist in South Korea, a lot of them are designed to refine Middle Eastern oil, not Russian oil. And so, yes, importing Russian oil might help to, fill up the oil barrels, but will there be a bottleneck? Will there be an inability for the refineries to be able to refine the oil at capacity? That's a different question altogether.
I can tell that you have been spending a lot of time in the past 2 weeks, researching oil-related stuff suddenly,
You don't
right?
say.
Well, but there is a latest development just from this morning, but it's reported. First of all, it's not just South Korea. There are a whole bunch of countries that are reportedly considering the same thing. India actively increasing imports. Bangladesh requested permission to import. Indonesia considering imports. Thailand in talks with Russia. Philippines exploring import options. And South Korea, of course, reviewing the possibility. Myanmar, Laos also sort of referenced as well. And also from just this morning, just a couple hours ago, a report says, according to government this morning, through consultations with the US, it confirmed that non-dollar currency settlements are possible when introducing Russian oil and petroleum products, and that secondary sanctions are not applied, which significantly mitigate financial risk, which was the biggest obstacle, is what a couple of reports claim that the government said.
Non-US dollars, so yuan or rubles. Oof.
Non-US dollar transfer basically, and that's a big deal if that's true, right? Does that change anything when it comes to what we were considering last week, what the risks might be?
Well, again, it's not about the sanctions themselves, because the fact that all of these countries are diving in right now means that there is a legal room to import Russian oil without getting hit by Western sanctions. So that's not the problem. The problem is, again, supply chains.
Yeah.
Can the Russians produce enough oil for all of these countries' demands right now? They're going to give it a try. And by the way, poor Zelensky. The guy was doing kind of well, and Putin was almost on the ropes. But Donald Trump, he just saved Putin's ass. But anyway, aside from all of this exciting and uplifting talk about energy, Tuna, we had, well, by we, I mean South Korea, had a rather exciting past few days with the president finally showcasing the first mass-produced KF-21 fighter jet. And you've been monitoring this. Could you walk us through this, please?
Right. So President Lee Jae-myung, he was at Sacheon yesterday at the KAI factory and observing the rollout of the first mass-produced KF-21 Borame fighter jet. He did say that it embodies aspirations for the self-reliant defense that he's been talking about and sort of propels South Korea to go on to a top 4 defense exporter by the end of his term. So he was speaking that South Korea has finally secured weapons to protect peace with its own technology, not only on land and sea, but also in air. So it is very sort of chest beating, very happy I'm in front of a KF-21 kind of talk. And then he went into how air defense systems and the K9 howitzers that are being recognized by different countries around the world as a top defense export asset that they're trying to procure. And it was just a bunch of Lee just saying that Sachon's prospects in selling these KF-21s in the future will be at an all-time high.
We really should put quotation marks around the phrase self-reliant defense.
Well, it's been a goal for the Lee administration ever since they took office. OPCON is a prime example of that.
You really want to be super self-reliant, though?
Anyways,
If you're talking about the KF-21, the engine alone is not Korean made, is it? It's from GE. Yeah, it's a GE engine. It's not Korean.
week ahead, what are some of the things that are coming up, Junha?
Right, so we've got the Indonesian president who will be visiting just at the end of this week and at the start of next week. And we've also got the French president also coming right afterwards. We've also got, as I mentioned during this podcast before, the introduction of the supplementary budget bill that will be introduced by the DP and the government as a joint bill on the 31st.
And this is technically not week ahead, but Johan is about to arrive in Paris, I think, very soon to meet Rubio and others among the G7 nations. There is a foreign minister meeting very soon. The technical agenda is nothing related to Hormuz, but I think that will be the actual agenda in the bilats, right?
If they don't talk about it, they ought to be fired. And anyway, all of this information will be sent to email inbox by Monday at 2 p.m. So if you'd like to know more, please subscribe. Bye.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in.
If you want to know more, sign up for our daily executive briefings. We'll brief you on all you need to know from the past 24 hours and why it matters, delivered to your inbox every morning.
If you want to stay ahead of the curve, sign up for Korea Pro to get a full package of insights, from daily expert analysis to profiles, month in review, week ahead, and more.
And until next time, I'm Jungmin Kim.
I'm Junha Park.
And I'm John Lee, and we'll see you next time on the Korea Pro Podcast.